Hey, this is a video response to Shafe. Question of the video: How can I call myself a Christian and have a laissez-faire attitude towards the LGBTQ plus community? I think that's an excellent question, especially when Christians and Muslims and several religious people, if you didn't know any better, a core tenet of these Abrahamic religions is anti-homosexuality. And there are many instances in our holy tome where the text points out an averrence and a repulsion towards that kind of lifestyle. In the end, man will become lovers of self, or women and unnatural relations, and the list certainly goes on. The thing is, for me, a couple of key points. And if you wanted the spoiler alert Reader's Digest version of it, two big things come to mind. First is the whole good old-fashioned, what would Jesus do? If a person's a Christian, that needs to be the first thought that may easily pass through our mind. And for me, it isn't what would Jesus do, it is what did Jesus do. And I have faith that the thing Jesus did is to literally submit himself to be put to death for the sins of others. So now, the mark that Jesus sets isn't quite the equivalent of what I'm capable of accomplishing, but it allows me to have the proper mindset of, okay, how does Jesus feel about gays, or the overall LGBTQ plus community? How does Jesus feel about sinners? Well, he loves them so much that he was willing to die and be the results of their sin. He was willing to take that on himself. All those sins, all those future sins. And because of him being God, he was able to do that and have it make the difference. To what particular effect, though? I don't think that if I have the correct perspective of what God had in mind when dying for our sins, how can we possibly take the approach where we're screaming in a person's face in an angry type fashion, letting them know that they're wrong, letting them know that they're sick because they feel a certain way? It doesn't make sense to me, Shafe. The other part is, this was directly said by him when he was upon this earth. Why do you go to your brother and say, here, let me take the sliver out of your eye? The parable of trying to help someone else with their sin. And Jesus said, "You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye so that you may better see, and then you may take the sliver out of your brother's eye." I take that very much to heart. So I very much cautiously approach the sin of others. I know many people that profess the same faith as me that disagree with it. And I know that there are people that are in different places of their life. Like you as a parent, you are taking on a moral household obligation to declare that, this is the way that Shafe's house does it. We don't look at this, we don't look at that, we don't touch the no-no on other boys, that kind of thing. We don't do it that way. And I'm not in that phase of my life any longer. My kids are grown up now, and I have a bit of a different role. And I mean, you and I may not share the same morals as it pertains to that in how we approach it. Like what's the right way to deal with your son or daughter coming to you and saying, "Hey, I like people that have a thing between their legs, same as me." You and I may have a very different approach towards that. If I'm to hear you speak in your video, I would be under the assumption that you would simply say, "No, we don't do it that way. You're mentally ill. Let's go to the hospital or the doctor and figure this thing out." I don't know if that's necessarily the case. And I don't think, knowing you personally a little bit, not a ton, I mean, we're still getting to know each other, but what exactly would you do if your child came to you with that, or entrusted you with those feelings and those temptations? How would you really get to the bottom of it? Do you just point out the mental illness aspect of it? Or do you really get in there and search those feelings out? How is the approach? When Jesus chose to save me from my sins, now we're talking about me now, why did he do it? Did he do it so that I can be mean to other people that he also chose to die for their sins for? How do you explain that to a person who doesn't understand or doesn't believe that someone else died for something that they may or may not see as a sin? How do you really get to the bottom of it? I'll tell you, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. And I will say also that to approach it incorrectly is really at the peril of your message. And those things, Shafe, I leave to God. Referencing the Bible again, there were sins and things happening to people, and the apostles came to Jesus and he said, "Hey, why can't we cast out this demon? Why can't we do this particular thing?" And Jesus explained there's certain things that can only be answered through prayer. And I've seen things resolved in God's time, not my own. And I believe it transcends the moral self-righteousness of people at a school board meeting that are worried about what books may or may not be on the shelves and what books may or may not need to be burned. So that's what it comes down to for me. But there does certainly seem to be a dichotomy against my conviction based on it, you know. But if the sin of another causes me repulsion or doesn't cause me repulsion, I can only hope that that's for God's reason. And my understanding of the commission that Christ left me with before he departed the earth was to free the slaves, to do what I could to relieve the torture, those captive in themselves. It's something I naturally do poorly, but you know, by his mercy, he lets me claim that that's what I'm doing. So, hope that serves to answer. If it doesn't, let me know. I believe this is a good conversation. It's one worth having, and it's a single leg of my overall point. So if we can continue this, that'd be great. And we'll catch you later.